Hello and welcome to the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity Grantee Training. In this presentation, we will be discussing procurement standards for recipients of grant funds from the state of Illinois. What is procurement? Procurement is the act of obtaining equipment, materials, or supplies. Grantees with the state of Illinois are required to comply with procurement standards as they purchase goods and services. This can, and frequently does, entail a competitive bidding process, which helps identify and request products and/or services based on cost-effectiveness and quality. Per 2 CFR 200.317 through 327, grantees must implement a procurement policy that aligns with state standards. This policy must be written and documented and thoroughly communicated to everyone within the grantee's organization. It is important to note that an organization's procurement policy cannot be word of mouth, as this can lead to confusion, bending the rules, or inconsistent processes which can lead to non-compliance. The state of Illinois needs assurance that grant funds are being used efficiently. DCEO requires full transparency in how state funds have been used. This helps reduce inefficiency or waste in the use of grant funds. Proper procurement means that you're getting the right price for goods and services and that grant funds won't be denied or clawed back for non-compliance. It is also important that grantees are aware of bid stringing. What is bid stringing? For the Illinois General Assembly, a person commits unlawful stringing of bids when he or she, with the intent to evade the bidding requirements of any unit of local government or school district, knowingly strings or assists in stringing or attempts to string any contract or job order with the unit of local government or school district. Bid stringing is a Class 4 felony. Let's take a look at an example of bid stringing. Townville adheres to a policy that says any purchase that exceeds $50,000 must follow a formal bidding process. Townville needs to procure a bucket truck to trim trees on Main Street. Pricey Incorporated has a bucket truck for sale for $150,000. Pricey Incorporated wants the contract with Townville, but they know about the $50,000 threshold. Townville understands what the procurement policy states but wants to avoid the bidding process. To do this, they break down the purchase into parts, with Townville paying $50,000 for the truck's engine, another $50,000 for the bucket, and an additional $50,000 for the shell of the truck. Why does this matter? Grantees and vendors cannot circumvent the procurement process. In this case, the rule was deliberately broken. Remember, bid stringing is a Class 4 felony. There are 5 different procurement types, each with its own set of requirements. Micro-purchase, simplified acquisition, sealed bids, proposals, and non-competitive. Micro-purchases are purchases made below the micro-purchase threshold established by the Federal Acquisition Regulations, or FAR, which is currently set at $15,000. These purchases are allowable as long as they are considered reasonable. Reasonable may be up for interpretation. Within their own procurement policy, organizations should have their own definition for what they consider reasonable. For example, Joel needs batteries. Specifically, Joel needs a 12-pack of AA's. Based on Joel's experience, he knows he shouldn't have to pay more than $18 for batteries. When out running errands, Joel stops in the hardware store and sees a 12-pack of AA's for $14.99. Joel is comfortable with this price, so he makes the purchase. This is why it is important for grantees to specifically document their own clear definition of reasonable. Grantees should feel encouraged and empowered to shop around and compare prices for goods and services under the $15,000 threshold. The micro-purchase threshold of $15,000 can be increased to up to $50,000 at the discretion of DCEO. Increased thresholds require that grantees meet and document all the necessary requirements. Simplified acquisitions are also considered an informal procurement method. Here, purchases are more than the micro-purchase threshold but beneath the formal procurement threshold currently established by FAR at $350,000. Grantees can choose a lower threshold in their procurement policy for simplified acquisitions, but it cannot exceed the informal procurement method threshold. Here is where grantees are required to shop around for different sources of goods or services that they wish to procure. For example, Danny is in the market for a very specific automobile. Danny wants a specific make, year, and model. He begins the process of shopping around his area and contacts 3 different dealerships via email for quotes. Danny emails local dealerships A, B, and C for quotes and availability. The exact same car is available in all 3 locations. Danny finds that dealership A has the fairest price, so he buys the car from them. In this scenario, Danny retains each quote received via email for audit purposes and for his records. For simplified acquisitions, grantees must have an adequate number of responses from the business sourcing their needs, also referred to as vendors. It is up to the grantee to determine what they consider adequate. Again, this definition needs to be part of the organization's procurement policy and ensure that everyone within that organization understands. DCEO strongly suggests that grantees have at least 3 vendors to choose from to get the best price. Sealed bids are a formal procurement method. Sealed bids are purchases that exceed the simplified acquisition threshold, which is currently set at $350,000 by FAR, or the grantee's established simplified acquisition threshold, which must be lower than $350,000. This amount is also subject to change over time. It is up to the grantee to determine if their threshold needs to be lower than the threshold established by FAR due to risk, and this should be documented in the organization's own written procurement policy. Sealed bids are typical of larger programs such as capital projects. Sealed bids require that procedures for the solicitation are documented prior to the solicitation occurring. Grantees must post a public solicitation specifying what they would like to procure, the due date for the submission of the bids, and the date and location of when bids will be opened. Bidders must be given adequate time to submit sealed bids. All sealed bids must be opened at the same time and place outlined in the invitation to bid. There should be no less than 2 vendors who submit a bid. If grantee doesn't receive at least 2 bidders, they should notify their grant manager of the situation to determine how to proceed. Bids are reviewed and scored based on the most practical and cost-effective price. The lowest bidder should be capable of performing at a level as that of the highest bidder. All documentation of the solicitation procedures, advertising invitation to bid, bids received, and costs analysis must be maintained. Proposals are also a formal procurement method. Proposal procurement methods are to be used if the purchase is over the simplified acquisition threshold currently established by FAR at $350,000 or less, if the grantee has established a lower threshold. You may be wondering what makes proposals different from sealed bids. Sealed bids are more focused on cost, whereas proposals are needed if the grantee can't specify exactly what they need or need to assess vendors based on additional criteria other than cost. Here, the lowest bidder may not be the automatic winner of the contract. Instead, grantees perform a thorough review of the quality of the proposal and capability of the vendor to ensure efficient use of funds. Think quality over price. Proposals require that information on procedures for conducting technical evaluations of proposals and how selection will be made be established prior to the solicitation occurring. Grantees must post a public solicitation specifying all evaluation factors and their relative importance and the due date for the submission of the proposal. Bidders should be given adequate time to submit proposals. There should be no less than 2 bidders who submit proposals. If grantee doesn't receive at least 2 proposals, they should notify their grant manager of the situation and inquire how to proceed. All documentation of the method for conducting technical evaluations of the proposals received and making selections, advertising request for proposals, proposals received, and scoring and selection of proposals based on the method for conducting technical evaluations previously identified. Non-competitive purchases are not typical. In these cases, the item may be under the micro-purchase threshold or only available from a single source. For instance, a specific product that only one vendor can reasonably provide. For example, imagine a grantee has a very specific piece of equipment that is vital to their operation. That piece of equipment breaks and the replacement part is available from only one vendor. Or it can be an emergency, or in the event you only get a single bidder on a public solicitation. In all these cases, grantees should contact their grant manager to determine how to proceed. Both the Notice of Funding Opportunity and the grant agreement state that the State of Illinois Procurement Standards must be followed. Always remember, the bigger the purchase, the more formal the procurement policy will likely be. Do not string purchases in order to stay under thresholds, this will be reviewed. Remember to document everything. Keep your policies, public solicitations, bids, receipts, invoices, and all other relevant documents. Remember to keep notes and track everything. You'll be glad you did, as they may be requested for review. To learn more about the thresholds established by federal acquisition regulations, visit acquisition.gov. You can also check out more DCEO grant training videos by visiting our Grantee Resources page. You may enter the bit.ly link below into your web browser, or scan the QR code with your phone. Thank you for watching this presentation on DCEO's Procurement Standards. If you have any questions, please reach out to ceo.granthelp@illinois.gov.